for more on the illegal immigrant mass shooter captured tonight in Texas, we go to Fox News contributors Leo 2.0 Terrell and Tommy Lahren. Also, former acting ICE director Tom Homan is with us. Tom, let me start with you. This is your wheelhouse. If you wanted to close the border, secure the border, we know how to do it. Obviously, Joe Biden chose a different policy. What really scared me as the days went on here and 5 innocent people killed, including an 8-year-old, is that this guy probably went back to Mexico. But what should shock the conscience of every American is this guy was able to be deported and come back not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, but 5 times. Now, that only happens if you have wide open borders.
You're absolutely right, and this would not happen on the Trump administration. This guy was a fugitive, right? He entered the country illegally after being deported 5 times, which means 5 felonies. He also has several DUI convictions. Under the Trump administration, being a fugitive and being a re-entrant felon and being a DUI conviction, he would have been priority. ICE would have been looking for him, arresting him, and putting him in prison for a violation of the Re-Entry Act, which is a felony. However, under Biden administration, Mayorkas sent on ICE memorandum. I know I was involved in a lawsuit in Texas, where he basically took 85% of the criminals that the Trump administration arrested and deported. So this administration took them off the table. 85% of the criminals ICE arrested during the Trump administration, they can no longer arrest. That's what's terrible. These 5 people that were murdered, 5 innocent people, didn't have to die. Now that he murdered 5 people, now he's a nice priority. Too little, too late. But a shout out to the Border Tax Unit, the same Border Patrol Tactical Unit that took the shooter out in Uvalde Elementary School. They were involved in this takedown today. So God bless the men and women of the Border Patrol. The same Border Patrol that this president and this secretary slandered from the White House podium. Once again, they proved heroes of the day. So God bless the men and women in green.
Great. Well said. Very well said. Let me bring in Leo 2.0 Terrell, who is also an attorney. Correct me, Leo, if I'm wrong, but Joe Biden, as president, took an oath to uphold the Constitution. That means to uphold the laws of this country, whose foundation is that Constitution. Now, tell me if I'm wrong in my analysis that not only did Joe Biden not uphold his oath to office, but he was aiding and abetting in the law breaking by allowing these people into this country illegally, facilitating it, and offering, let's see, free phones in some cases, free transportation to whatever state they were going to send them to, and again, preferential treatment because they didn't have to have a COVID test or a COVID vaccine in the middle of a pandemic. And don't forget, they dump kids in these cages. And if it weren't for the likes of Senator Ted Cruz in Texas, we would never have gotten the images of those kids in the middle of a pandemic in cages that were overcrowded, that Joe Biden built.
Sean, I think you just drafted the first article of impeachment for Joe Biden because Joe Biden has failed to uphold his constitutional duty. Yeah, you have just written the first article of impeachment because he should be impeached. I mean, basically, this administration has blood on its hand. And as Laura Trump was talking about a change in leadership, if there was ever a case for Donald Trump to be president, is the southern border. We had a secure border under President Trump, and that's what is missing. And I'll tell you right now, besides what's going on, he has basically opened the doors to the drug cartel, sex trafficking, the fentanyl. Joe Biden has basically breached and abandoned his obligation as president in protecting this country from foreign enemies.
Right. Leo, I got a question. If you were my attorney and I was arrested because I went down to the border and I picked somebody up and I drove them to California or New York or any other state, would I be arrested for human trafficking and likely convicted, even if you, the great attorney that you are, were representing me?
Absolutely. And this is what's going on. There's a lot of accessories to the human trafficking. These are people in this country who are aiding and abetting people to get into this country illegally. They would be convicted. No matter how great of a lawyer I may be, I'm going to lose those cases because that is what's happening right now.
All right, let me bring in Tommy Lahren. Tommy, I know, for the better part of your career, you have focused a lot of attention on the issue of the border and illegal immigration. It was under control under President Trump. You see what's happening now. We're at, nearly 6.5 million illegal immigrants that we know of that have come into the country under Joe Biden. We know how to fix it. He doesn't want to fix it. Obviously, he wants this policy to continue.
They won't recognize what's happening as a crisis because the Democrats do not see this as a crisis. They see it as an opportunity. It is, in fact, a crisis, but when they want more voters into this country, they're going to make sure that they do that by any means possible. They're already planning on giving these people amnesty at some point, and then we know voting rights is going to come right along with it. So this is all by design. Democrats play the long game. But let's talk about this illegal immigrant, this fugitive, this murderer who executed his neighbors. Let's also keep in mind that in sanctuary cities and states, local law enforcement would not be able to cooperate with ICE. So how many people like this Francisco Oropesa are existing now in these sanctuary cities and these sanctuary states around the country? These are criminal, illegal aliens that are on the loose by design, by Democrat policies, not just by Joe Biden, but by Gavin Newsom. And when you look at the other cities and states that have passed similar laws, this is by design. This is a dereliction of duty, putting Americans in harm's way on purpose. And this absolutely should be an impeachable offense.
Well, let me go back to Leo. This became a big deal today. It was on the front page of the New York Post. The New York City mayor, Eric Adams, and I thought New York City was supposed to be a sanctuary city, doubled down, accusing the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, of targeting, quote, black mayors. He doubled down on that accusation about Abbott with these buses full of migrants. Now, in total, you have about 15,000 illegal immigrants that came to New York City. Now, the question is, if it's a sanctuary city in a state, my question is, I would think that they would have their arms wide open saying, welcome to our city. But apparently, they're calling the governor of Texas racist or making that suggestion.
I am so offended by this ultimate race card. He's using the race card to deflect from his incompetence. He is an absolutely horrific mayor. And when he talks about L.A. and Chicago, where there's other black mayors, why do you think people are leaving? Because these are horrible Democratic mayors who talk a game of sanctuary cities but don't want the burden. Look at Washington, D.C., Eric Adams. Look at Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and that incompetent White House press secretary who lies all the time about the number of the reduction in immigration. You have to get those scoundrels out of office and put Donald Trump back in office.
Tommy, I'll give you a crack at that as well. But, I mean, Mayor Adams is once again, you know, basically spreading lies here. He knows full well that these illegal immigrants willingly chose to come to his city. Sounds to me, if anybody's racist here, it's him, because supposedly he has open arms or an open border policy. But now that they end up in his city, now he's angry that they're here.
So elections have consequences.
I mean, that's like inviting
the
you
good people
say,
of
come on
Texas,
over to my house for dinner, and then saying, no, get the hell out of here.
No, it's exactly what it is. But as I was saying, Sean, elections have consequences. The good people of Texas did not vote for an open border, all right? But these people that are in these blue Democrat-run cities and states, they apparently did vote for this. So I say we should enrich their communities, bus, baby, bus, and show them what they voted for. If they're not near the border, if they're not in a border city or state, bring the border to them. Maybe they'll understand the danger. Of course they want to pull the race card. It has nothing to do with the race of these mayors. It's about the leadership. That knows no skin color. Look at the man we have in office. He's white as a snowflake. It makes no difference. It's about the leadership. You want to see what the border's doing to American cities and states, you should see it up close and personal.
Well said. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.